Well, it's the Colonel here, and I've been thinking that I made that video about my early years, but I left out a lot of things. So I think I'm going to do a second video of some memories that uh, came up and some things that I thought about, and I talked to my brother, and he clarified some things. I told the story about the drawings in the hallway, and my brother fessed up to me. No, it wasn't him. But yes, it was Karen. It was the girl. He also told me, or how come I got disciplined? And he said, because our foster brother told me when my brother told him that he saw Karen drawing on the hallway, our foster brother told him, "Oh, we don't say anything. Just let it go. Don't say anything. She's special." And see, I didn't know that. She had some issues, I guess, that I didn't realize at such a young age. However, the stories I told were true. And maybe she had some things going on that wasn't fair of me to feel that. But hey, I just was relaying to you how I felt as a little boy, and at the time in that situation, I didn't think it was right. And my brother said no, it wasn't right, but he wanted me to understand that I needed to know what he was up against because our older brother was going to put a beating on him if he told. So they both let me take the beef or let me take the hit for it, which is what really happened. I told my brother, I said, "You know how messed up that is?" And he laughed. He goes, "Yeah, I know." He goes, "But you got to put yourself in my shoes. What was I supposed to do? When our brother, he told me, don't say anything, just let you take it." And I was like, man, that's messed up. But anyway, and my brother clarified a few other things and sparked some memories that I had. And so I thought I would just follow up with that video before moving forward in my story, because I left off about being put up for adoption. But I thought I would go back and pick up some of these other hilarious moments. Some of them kind of gross, but things that stuck in my mind over the years and make me chuckle. It might not make you chuckle, and that's okay. But if you do me a favor, hit the like, okay? If you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. Laugh along with me. I got some feedback from our first video, from some people that watched it said that, the early story, about, you know, being orphaned basically and whatnot, kind of made them sad, made them cry a little bit. And you know what? That's okay. I cried at times too. Didn't talk about that yet, but later on it hit me what had happened, and we'll get into that story as the story progresses. I think it hit me about when I was in third grade, the totality of the situation that I was in with my brother. But anyway, I wrote some things down, and I thought about some of the things that we did. I remembered kindergarten. I started thinking about it. And some of you have kindergarten stories too, and probably some of the same. If you were naughty little boy like I was, even though everybody thought I was the good little boy, I wasn't, But I remember coaxing those girls to go up on those monkey bars so that all of us little boys could do you know what, and I won't even say it. You know what we were doing. And those poor little girls, they didn't have a clue. I think a couple of them knew, and they were in on it. They were game. And, we were just being naughty little boys. But I remember the monkey bars, and then I remember the teacher catching us, and let's just say that didn't go over so well. So we got around that, and we had these big building blocks in our kindergarten. I mean, these were big wooden blocks, and we used to make houses. We'd make little rooms in the kindergarten classroom, those big blocks, and then we'd talk to girls into going into those little rooms, and then we'd kiss the girls when we thought we could get away with it. And I'm not going to lie, we got away with it a couple times. Sometimes we didn't. We got in trouble. But I remember building those big rooms, and and we had a cover on top of it too, so you could crawl inside. It was dark and nobody could see. They couldn't see what we were trying to do. And it just kills me that at such a young age that Why was I thinking like that at such a young age? But I guess I was. I was just a normal little boy. Although I think a little boy, I would never have thought my son doing something like that, which I don't know why, because I did it. Now my son was very quiet and very introverted when he was younger. But I don't know. It's just some of the bad, just stupid little boy bad things that I did. I can't believe I got away with half the stuff that I got away with. But there's a couple things that popped up about kindergarten. I just remember that those were the highlights, good or bad. I'm not a pervert, even though it sounds like it. But yeah, I remember wanting to go into build a little building, because I wanted to kiss the little girls because they were cute. Although I don't remember any of them. But back then, that was the thing. And I thought of something else. Back to those woods. And I mentioned about the Charlie Daniels, the Woolly Swamp. Well, I was talking to my brother about that, and he's like, "Yeah, I remember those woods." He goes, "That was something else." What we used to do is we would tie strings on the trees when we were little as we would go down in those woods, because the back of the house sloped down, and so going into the woods sloped down, and it went all the way down to this creek that went through there. So I was always worried about getting lost, so I would tie little strings or yarn, whatever I could find, on the trees so that I could find my way back if I ever went back there by myself or it was just my brother and I. And I remember sometimes the strings didn't work, like we couldn't find the strings. It was scary. We always ended up getting out somehow, or somebody came looking for us and got us out. That also made me remember that, man, I find this hard to believe, there was quicksand back in those woods. That's why it was spooky too. And I don't know what I was thinking, but the way I remember it, I don't know if it was my brother or if it was a foster brother or what, it convinced me that I could run across that quicksand. No problem, I could make it. You don't worry, Doug, the baby colonel. I gave up my name. Don't worry about it. You can make it. So I tried. And guess what? I didn't make it. I started sinking. Then I started getting scared. And I'm like, what in the world? I'm going to die. Help me, I'm going to die. And they're like putting sticks out there for me to grab on, and I grabbed it, it would break. And then finally they got a vine or whatever. I ended up getting out. They're like, stop struggling, we'll get you out. And I thought, sure, I was going to die. But I'm here, so I didn't die, apparently. But I remember that was a scary moment. Those woods, that was something else, man. Quicksand. Of course, we had to worry about snakes, too. And, but, yeah, it was just creepy. Those woods were creepy. But we would go down there anyway because we like going down the creek and we like to see the crawdads and the crayfish or whatnot. So, yeah, I'll never forget that. So the word to the wise, write this down, like the guy says, write this down. Don't try to run across quicksand. It probably won't end up very well, because it didn't end up very well for me, And I mentioned, too, about the big wheel. That big wheel, I don't know if you all remember, those of you that are my age, you'll remember the big wheel. That little, tricycle had the big wheel in the front, and the small wheel, two small wheels in the back that were real wide, and it was plastic. Well, like I said, that property was on a slope, and they had a gravel driveway. So we would go up to the top of that gravel driveway, and we would just start pedaling as hard as we could coming down there, and I'd grab the handbrake, and we'd do 360, spin around, see how far we could slide. I loved that thing. And I ended up having to leave it there, and I was very sad about that. Well, my brother reminded me of something else we used to do. I don't recall doing it because I think I was too chicken or hurt too much. But he used to love running down that gravel driveway in his bare feet. Just because, he just wanted to be, he just wanted to be a bad dude and show how tough he was. And we were little kids. And remember, I think he probably made fun of me because I couldn't do it. But he'd run down there and carrying on and whatnot in his bare feet. And he just thought he was something else. And it was a contest. See who could run the furthest down that gravel without falling out because it hurt so much. And those were good times, That's back in the days. We didn't have electronic devices. We had to play with each other. We had to play amongst ourselves, and we'd come up with our imagination, and we would do things to take up our time. You don't see that as much nowadays. Now in the Philippines, it's still there somewhat, but as the young people, the young parents, they want to entertain their kids or keep their kids busy, so they throw them the cell phone, and then the kids get all wrapped up in that cell phone and YouTube and cartoons and stuff, and I'm not so sure that that's such a good thing. But that's a subject for another day. And that's an opinion piece for another day. But anyway, back to my childhood, baby Colonel childhood. And yes, for those of you that want to know, we did drink from the hose. You know, we drank from the water hose. And guess what? We survived. We're still alive. We didn't die. And you know what else we did? We used to make mud pies. For those of you who don't know what a mud pie is, you know, you just dig in there in the dirt and you're adding water and you just making that all sloppy and whatnot. And if your mama could give you a little cake pan or whatever, you know, then you got a pan or, you know, beach toy, whatever, and we make those little mud pies. And I'm not going to lie and say that we didn't ever eat them. And guess what? I'm still alive and we live. And then there were the fun times, the special times where Mom said, hey, if you guys go pick the berries, I'll make you a pie with the berries that you pick. And there was a lot next door to that house, a vacant lot, and they had blackberries and raspberries. So we'd take our little buckets and we would go over there. Of course, now we had to watch out for the snakes, but we would go over there and we would pick the blackberries and the raspberries, whatever was growing. And there was a lot of them over there. The problem is, baby Colonel liked to eat those things before they made it to the pie. So it was always a challenge. And I'm going to tell you, if Mom sent us over there to get raspberries, and we came back with just a few, she knew we had been eating them. Of course, we denied it. But we couldn't deny it because she knew. She knew how many raspberries were over there. She wouldn't have sent us over there if she didn't know. Duh. You know? But we weren't thinking like that back then. Word to the wise. Your mom, probably smarter than you. anyway. And then there was a time talking about berries. I think we were visiting one of our aunt's house. I don't remember her name. Maybe it was Nancy. I don't remember. But we were visiting Aunt's house, and they had this huge mulberry tree in their front yard. And I'm here to tell you, baby Colonel likes he likes some mulberries. I still do. But on this particular day, Mom didn't want us getting dirty. She didn't want us eating the mulberries, and she told us, "Okay, you can go climb in the mulberry tree, but don't eat the mulberries." And I'm thinking, why? You know, this isn't the Garden of Eden. You know, I should be able to eat a mulberry. And I thought, if I eat a couple mulberries, she's not going to know. So what did I do? Yeah, that's right. I ate me some mulberries. And guess what? She knew. And I'm like, how in the world she know? Because she's like, baby Colonel, you were eating those mulberries, weren't you? No. Are you sure? You sure you weren't eating mulberries? I think you were eating mulberries. No, I wasn't. You said we couldn't, so I didn't. I was lying through my teeth. And she knew it. How did she know it? Because mulberries tend to stain the fingertips. And the juice can stain the lips too. And evidently, I had mulberry stains on my lips. I had mulberry stains on my fingertips, and I didn't take any notice to it. Anyway, yeah, she saw the stains on my fingers. She saw the stains on the lips. And yeah, I think I got disciplined for that. I don't really remember, but I know it didn't go over too well because what was I doing? I was lying. Again. Lying's wrong. But, you know, little kids, we don't want to get in trouble. So we usually tend to tell a lie because we don't want to get in trouble. But it was wrong. Yeah, raspberries, mulberries, they always got me in trouble. Always. Every time. Because I couldn't keep from eating. It's like the chocolate bunny ears at Easter. I couldn't keep myself from eating that chocolate bunny. But anyway, I got caught. And that's just the way it is. Oh, something else that I remembered. Now well, I'll tell this other story first. We had chickens. And those dang chickens, man, I tell you what, they would get out of this chicken coop, fly over the fence, and they would get into the garden, and they're doing what chickens do. They're eating our vegetables and whatnot that we were trying to grow. And I'm like, it didn't bother me because, you know, they might have been eating some of them weeds I was supposed to be pulling and didn't feel like pulling, but I had to anyway. But I remember Dad going out there, yanking them chickens up and pulling out this big old knife. I don't know where, if it was from the kitchen or he had it. I don't know what it was, but I remember him cropping those chicken wings, cutting all their feathers off in half so they could not fly over that. And that's something always stuck. I remember putting them up there on the side of the coop and cutting them. I'm like, what the world's he doing? And then I realized, oh, okay, I know what he's doing. He's keeping the chickens so they can't fly, because he said, I don't want the chickens to fly out anymore. And so, be as it may, that's something that stuck in my mind, and I remembered after talking to y'all, telling y'all my story before. And there was one other story. It's a little bit on the gross side, so if you're a little squeamish, maybe you should just like fast forward the video here. But I'm going to tell a story because this is typical baby Colonel. Typical something stupid that I would do. Well, I had this thing of, I didn't like to use the toilet till I absolutely had to. I just, I was just too late. I didn't want to, I was playing or doing whatever. I didn't want to stop doing what I was doing because, it was fun, and I didn't want to, go inside and take care of business. Now that I'm older, I realize, hey, you got to take care of that business or it's going to take care of you. So anyhow, on this particular day, I was down in the basement. This house had a basement. And down in that basement was, I remember, I think Dad, he had his tractor in there on one side of the basement. And then there was an old style washing machine. They had the rollers in it. Some of you remember when you washed the clothes and you put them through the rollers to wring all the water out. And they had a spin cycle, back then like we have nowadays in our laundry machines. But there was one day that I had to use the toilet really bad. But I did not want to go up those steps. And I was holding it and holding it. Then I got to the point where I couldn't have gone up the steps if I wanted to. And I'm like, man, I got to go. I can't hold this. What am I going to do? Well, remember I was talking about the porch that we jumped off of because they told me I was Superman. Well, and I said underneath that porch was where the oil tank was. Well, there was a room and there was a doorway. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to go back there and do my business back behind that oil tank. Well, that's what I did. I went back, found an oil tank. I'm not even sure if I dropped my drawers, and I think I just dropped out my pant leg. I don't know. But it sat there, and I'm like, what am I going to do with that now? And I'm like, well, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to leave it there. Well, as time went on, guess what? Dad went down there and he found what I had left laying there on the floor. And he's like, where'd that come from? And I'm like, it must have been one of the dogs. Well, come on now. He knew it wasn't any dog, But he's just looking at me. I'm like, he's like, I don't know how that got there. I don't know how that got there. And you know what? He let it go. To this day, I can't believe it that he let it go, but he let it go. And to this day, the only people that know about that was me and my brother, because I told him. Because I don't know why I told him. I guess I just told him everything. But what a gross little story. But I was a gross little boy, I guess, and that's what I did. And yeah, it was one of those things that stuck in my mind. I could have told that story before, but I was like, that's kind of gross. We shouldn't talk. But you know what? Stories from our childhood. Sometimes, we're sick puppies sometimes. We do crazy and odd things. And that's one of the crazy and odd things I did. There was a lot of odd things that I did. Maybe I'm not normal now, but I think I turned out kind of normal. But I look back on some of the habits and some of the stuff that I did when I was younger, and I'm just like, what in the world was my problem? If I had gone to see a psychologist, there's no telling what they would have diagnosed me with or what kind of medication they would put me on to stop me from doing some of the stupid little habits that I had. Maybe someday I'll talk about that. Pretty personal, but, who cares? I'm up in my 60s. What do I care what people think of as far as my childhood and what I did and whatnot? I just told you, the poo-poo story, which my brother's probably, I can't believe. Well, actually, I asked my brother, I said, you think I should tell? He's like, I can't believe you didn't say that during the first video because I thought sure. He goes, I thought sure that's where you were going. And I was, well, I thought about it, but I changed my mind and decided not to do that. Anyway, those are just some stories that I recall that I didn't remember the first time or that I didn't want to talk about. That brings us up to, the time. And if my if I could get my brother on here, I'm sure there's a whole lot more stories that he could tell, or he would shed his perspective on my stories, and I'm sure his perspective is probably very enlightening to you all and enlightening to me. Because whenever I talk to him, we talk about the past, and some of the stuff that he tells me, I'm like, man, I didn't know that. He's like, yeah. I'm like, I never knew. He goes, oh, I thought you knew. I'm like, no, man, I didn't know. I was looking at things from my perspective. But anyway, I hope you get a chuckle out of some of these more stories. And we're just going to call this, the Colonel's Early Years Part 2. And hopefully you got a little bit of chuckle out of a few and laughed a little bit. Or just shook your head like most people do when I tell them some of my crazy stories. They just shake their head like, man, you're crazy. But you know what? If you like some of it, once again, hit the like button. Share this content with some of your friends. And come back next time. We'll move on to the end of my time with the foster parents and the foster family, and I'll tell you what happened next and what brought that about, and some of the things are where my eyes were open to new realities and a new lifestyle that I'd never seen before. But join me, and we'll have fun talking about it, or at least I'll have fun talking about it. Anyway, till next time, God bless. Take care. Colonel's out.